David Thompson stood by the window of his small office, overlooking the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The early morning sun bathed the buildings in golden light, but his mind was clouded with frustration. Just the night before, he'd had an argument with his wife Claire. And this morning, he'd stumbled through a poorly received presentation at his job as a senior project manager. He couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was slipping through his fingers. Communication. It was supposed to be simple, wasn't it? You say what you mean and the other person understands. But lately that hadn't been the case. At home or at work, Claire had said, "You never really listen, David." And his boss, Mr. Hughes, had critiqued his team meeting with, "You need to make your points clearer or people won't follow your lead." He sat at his desk, spinning a pen between his fingers, wondering where things were going wrong. David wasn't dumb. He was educated, experienced, and capable. But maybe he was missing something about how people understood each other. Maybe clarity in communication wasn't about being smart. It was about being intentional. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. "We need to talk. Tonight. Please." David sighed, feeling the weight of their marriage on his shoulders. Claire was loving and kind, but lately, it seemed like every conversation turned into a misunderstanding. It was never about yelling or disrespect. It was more subtle, a disconnect, a lost signal between transmitter and receiver. That evening, David came home earlier than usual. Claire was already there, sitting on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her. Their golden retriever, Buddy, wagged his tail and nudged David's hand. "Hey," Claire said, offering a soft smile. "Hey," David replied, dropping his bag by the door. He sat across from her, trying to steady his nerves. "I didn't mean to upset you last night," she began. David nodded. "I know. I've just been feeling like maybe I haven't been hearing you the way I should." Claire looked surprised but pleased. "That's actually what I wanted to talk about. I think we've both been talking at each other instead of with each other." They sat in silence for a few moments. Then Claire said something that would stay with David for years. "Communication isn't just about speaking clearly. It's about understanding what the other person needs to hear." The next day, something shifted in David. He started reading a book Claire had given him months ago but he had never opened. The Art of Listening. It was a simple, honest guide to building empathy and expressing thoughts in a way that others could truly grasp. The author, a retired therapist named Susan Harwell, emphasized one thing over and over. Clarity in communication starts with intention. David decided to test this idea at work. That week, he was leading a team meeting about an upcoming software deployment. Normally, he would jump right into technical language, assuming everyone was on the same page. But this time he paused before speaking. He asked himself, what do they need to know? What are they worried about? He began the meeting differently. "I know the last rollout was rough, so I want to make sure everyone's clear about what's changing this time. I'm going to walk through the process step by step, and after each part, I want to hear your thoughts." Immediately, the atmosphere shifted. His team members leaned in. Questions flowed more easily. By the end of the meeting, there was energy in the room, a sense that everyone was actually aligned. Afterward, his colleague Lisa approached him. "That was the best meeting we've had in months. I actually felt like I understood everything." David felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in a while. Confidence grounded in connection. That evening he cooked dinner for Claire. Something simple, just pasta and garlic bread, but it was the gesture that mattered. As they ate, he brought up their earlier conversation. "You were right. I've been so focused on expressing my own thoughts that I forgot to slow down and think about what you might need from me." Claire smiled, wiping a bit of sauce from the corner of her mouth. "That's all I ever wanted, David. For us to feel like we're speaking the same language." In the weeks that followed, David took what he'd learned and ran with it. He made a point to clarify expectations during meetings. He summarized what others said before responding. He eliminated jargon when explaining concepts to clients. Most importantly, he practiced active listening, not just hearing words but acknowledging emotion. One afternoon, his boss called him into the office. David expected criticism, an old habit he hadn't yet shaken. But Mr. Hughes surprised him. "I've noticed a difference in your leadership lately," he said, folding his hands on the desk. "Your team is more cohesive. Clients are responding better. Whatever you're doing, it's working." David thanked him, though he knew it wasn't about doing something new so much as doing the right things with greater purpose. Home, Claire noticed the change too. Arguments faded. Laughter returned. Even mundane conversations about groceries or weekend plans felt warmer, richer. And then, something unexpected happened. One of David's direct reports, a young analyst named Jeremy, asked to meet for coffee. They sat in a quiet cafe downtown, steaming mugs between them. "I've been watching how you communicate," Jeremy said. "You always seem calm and clear, even when the room is chaotic. How do you do it?" David thought for a moment. "I used to think communication was about saying smart things. But now I know it's about being understood. That takes listening, patience, and making sure your message is shaped for the person hearing it." Jeremy nodded slowly. "I think I need to work on that." "Most of us do," David replied. Over the next few months, David continued growing, not just professionally but personally. He led a communication workshop for junior staff. He volunteered to coach a local high school debate team, focusing on clarity and empathy rather than theatrics. He and Claire even attended a couples retreat, not because they were in crisis, but because they both wanted to deepen their understanding of each other. On the last day of the retreat, they sat by a lake, watching ducks glide across the water. "I'm glad we didn't give up," Claire said. "I'm glad you made me listen," David replied. She laughed. "You made yourself listen. And now you're teaching others to do the same." It was true. David had become a better communicator not by memorizing techniques, but by changing his mindset. He learned that clarity wasn't about having all the answers. It was about making space for others to feel seen and heard. Years later, David wrote a short book inspired by his journey. He called it "Say What You Mean, Hear What They Need." It wasn't a bestseller, but it found its way into workplaces, book clubs, and even a few college classrooms. His favorite chapter was the one about Claire, the chapter where he described how miscommunication nearly cost him the most important relationship in his life. But through effort, vulnerability, and intentionality, they found their way back to each other. David knew the truth now. Clear communication isn't just about getting your point across. It's about building bridges. It's about respect, attention, and care. It's the thread that weaves together families, teams, and communities. And in a noisy world filled with mixed signals, he'd become someone others